Welcome to welcome to another episode of the Caution Free Podcast. I am your host, Colton Sutley, along with my co-host, Tim Friedhaber. Today we have racing photographer Branden Goodman on. Brandon, to start out, how did you get into racing?
So the way I got into racing is my dad used to race four wheelers back in the day when I was like super, super little, like maybe like 1 to 3 years old. But he raced like way long before that. He raced for World of Wheels, which was Bob. So him and Bob were like super close. And then like growing up, my dad got hurt. He had like an ankle injury, something happened, just became too hard to race after that. And he was in the fire department. So we started doing like fire safety, fire crew. Then it started into like, okay, we're gonna do racetracks. So he was Tri-Cities fire crew for I think like 25 years or something like that. And then I got into it with him. And then me and him were like, all right, let's go to Mercer. Let's go to Lernerville a couple of nights. Pretty much just going wherever we were. So we were around racing 3 nights a week doing fire safety. And then it kind of got into the thing of we started becoming good friends with Rick Ray at Sprint Car News. We seen him every weekend, every race we went to. Zach Anthony, seen him every weekend. So we're kind of like feeling out the photography side. And then it turned into, well, let's just get one, go a couple of nights, do fire crew, do photography, see what happens. And we went to, I think we went to Mercer for our first time in like 2019. And was like, all right, this is like pretty fun, real stress free. Don't have to worry about the accidents. Like we don't have to run over there and make sure. But it's like along the line of doing that, you become friends with some of the drivers. Like I'm pretty good friends with AJ Flick. Talk to him every race I go to. Try to get there early to talk to a few drivers beforehand, kind of see like how they're feeling, what do they think, and kind of just feel everybody out. And pretty much now it's every race I go to. Got to talk to somebody. Handful of people, whether it be Blaze Myers on his birthday last year, Sharon had to go up and say happy birthday to him. He had like a little party at his trailer, said hi to him, and then that's pretty much it. Just fire crew to photography. It's kind of a weird switch, but it's definitely way, way, way more stress free in some cases.
Yeah, I can only imagine how much less stressful it is, especially when with the sprint cars and that race
Mhm.
around here, sometimes getting in flipping and stuff, how stressful that could be. Um,
Yeah, it's crazy on like we had a wreck. Where was it? It was Tri-City and Economod flipped over and it landed on top of his lid. And at that time, I was the smallest one on the crew. So I was the only one that could get in there and like loosen belts. And the guy was like, who is that? Like, who's like loosening me up? And it's like, I'm the tiny one. And now I'm not so tiny anymore, but I can, it's just funny how all that comes around.
Um, with getting into photography at a racetrack, what are some of the photographers that you look up to or think are some of the best that you've been around?
Oh man. So me and Rick Rare are like very, very close. And Zach Anthony, Jason Brown, those like three are like probably like the big mentors I've had. Like Zach did my logo when I was like I'm going on my own because I was with my dad. We were G&G photography, and then I kind of branched out on my own. Was like, yeah, we'll see. And Zach and Rick and Jason were like the three that helped me out the most, being like, okay, you're on your own now. You got to be a little more sociable. They're like, "Dad, we know you don't like to be kind of in the way of anybody, but you kind of gotta pretty much present yourself every time." And then you have like Gary Ferguson at Lincoln. He's a track photographer now. Started last year as a track photographer. You got like JC Norgard that went from the World of Outlaw late models. Now he's doing NASCAR stuff. Just an unbelievable photographer. like just standing next to him and you're taking the same shot he is, and then he'll post on Facebook or like Instagram, and you're like, I took the same shot. How did you get that shot? We're in the same spot. And then you got guys like Chad Warner. He's doing the high limit stuff now for this year. It's like those guys are probably like the peak, I would say. I mean, you have Paul Arch. He's in like the Sprint Car Hall of Fame for photography. So it's like when you have him in the infield with you, it's like you got to kind of tweak at him to try to like get tips out of him. But they're all like super, super nice guys. There's so many photographers out there now that's pretty ridiculous in the way they take pictures. Like it's like you have like the Apex Media. There's there's Brian Smith. Brian Smith takes some of like the most insane blurred shots that I've ever seen. And it's just pretty much those guys are like my like mentors, like idols that anytime we're at a race and Chad Warner's there at an all-star race, I'm like his like little dog following him around, like trying to see what he's doing. And I'm like, oh, that's all right. You take pictures here. That makes sense now. Or like me and Zach did the Ryder Memorial race last year together, and it was like so much fun. It wasn't even like it wasn't a job. So if you surround yourself with people like that, it doesn't really feel like it's your job to take a picture. You're just pretty much hanging out with friends and shooting shots, and whatever you get, and pretty much have fun.
Nice.
Um, do you have a preference on where you take pictures from?
It kind of varies depending on where you go. So I'll go to Sharon, and they'll do if there's qualifying at Sharon, like the Outlaws come. I'll stand in the middle of two and three down the backstretch. There's a huge tire right there, and I stand up on it, and I'll shoot them coming down the backstretch, and then I'll like flip my settings real fast, and then blur shoot them coming down the front stretch. So it's a lot of like your thumbs are going, you're twisting around, hoping you don't fall off the tire, and it's just pretty much you just go around. There's a spot in turn one where the barrier is, where everybody comes to the middle. If you kind of like sit by the edge of that, the green light has an underglow, and at night you can kind of get an underglow effect of the cars. And you could do it in, I think it's three, has a light right there too. You can kind of get, but definitely turn one is like the underglow shot of the green, or if it's yellow. I learned that from Zach, and then Chad Warner did it like a couple months later. And I was like, oh, I'm not the only one that knows this now. And then you go to Tri City, and it's kind of like up in the air with Tri City. You don't know, depends on how the track is. You don't really, one is okay because there's that little dip that they have in one. That's always a cool spot because the mods usually get like a little airborne. The sprint guys know it's there, so they're like, screw that. I'm going high or I'm going low. They don't really like mess around with that too much. And then pretty much coming out of four there, those are like your two spots that you can kind of like mess around with, and usually your action shots come from there. And then Mercer's kind of you can go anywhere you want. Like I like being in one and two during the heat races because everybody's always gonna try to pull a move off the green flag. Usually coming out of four, they try to do something, or someone goes too high and hits like the barrels that they have up there, or concrete wall coming out of the pits. Someone sometime is going to hit it. It's just kind of part of the racing. Just get slicked up, go out there. Lincoln, I found out that turn four is like the money shot. Like everybody does wheelies coming out of four. Everybody's doing something. They have this guardrail on the bottom that makes it hard. If someone is running the bottom, you only get half the car because it sits so high. So if someone's running the top, you're good all day. Someone runs the bottom, you might as well not even put the camera on them. It's just guardrail half. And then Hummingbird, that's just a little small bull ring that's just go wherever you want. It's always good racing. I go to Lockhart's maybe like once or twice a year, and I go outside and shoot. You can just do anything you want. Joe's pretty good about pretty much letting you know, like, be smart on where you stand, because some of these carts can get out of control. So it's like just be mindful. You can pretty much take pictures wherever there. And then it's pretty much every track has its like own little niche. Like Raceway 7, if you take pictures outside of 2, there's like people that park there and there's a fence. Well, it's pretty open. I started shooting out there last year for the Lucas race, and I was like, this is awesome. Like, why did I wait so long to come out here to shoot? It was, I couldn't believe it. Like, I could get everything I can in there. Like, the cars looked perfect. It was just a beautiful spot. And anywhere in the infield you can go, it's just, you pretty much watch how the races play out. It's pretty much the thing. Like, it's a heat races. You could tell the top's going to be the thing, or the bottom's going to be the thing, or this guy's really fast, or this guy's really aggressive. It's pretty much, you kind of like watch and run to a spot, pretty much.
Do you find it like easier or harder to take photos of like the national series versus like the local stuff, or is it all the same?
Um, it's it's kind of harder for the national series because the high limit race when they came to Lernerville, there was so many photographers that it was like you kind of had to pick your spot and you had to stay in that spot. And if you moved away from that spot, here comes 6 people. So it's like local, you can go wherever you want. There's 6 to 10 photographers, not really, most of them and you can be like, hey, where are you shooting? Well, I'm going over here. Okay, well, I'll go over here. If you want to switch, we'll switch. You get the outlaws and those guys that come around, they have their own photographers. Like the outlaw sprints have Trent Gower. Wherever he wants to go, you pretty much give him that spot because he's more important than what we are. But those national series, like High Limit, everybody comes out of the woodwork with a camera. It's just it's just what it seems like. So I think it's a little harder, but the only advantage that you have as like a local is that you know the spots. So if someone's like, I'm gonna go over here, like, okay, that's fine. You're gonna get this photo, but I'm gonna be over here like a couple feet behind you and I'm gonna get the actual photo that you want. And it kind of plays out, but it's definitely a little more difficult with the bigger series that come around, but we kind of have the advantage of knowing where to go and how to put ourselves in spots than those guys are. So I don't know, it kind of goes either way. I think it's definitely difficult in some series. Most like I did the SRX series when they came to Sharon, and that was just complete mayhem. Like I stood in one spot all race, and I hated it. But if there's nothing I could have did to, I wasn't gonna move those guys out of the way. They get paid to take pictures of those guys like Waltrip and all them. So it's like, okay, you can have that spot, whatever.
So what do you adjust when you get stuck in a spot like that? Or do you just kind of go with it and hope you get something good out of it?
So I kind of go towards if I'm stuck in a spot, I'll go to like the people that do the blur shots. You just lower the shutter speed down, and I'll try to blur them where they're now in my photo as like a color.
Mm.
And sometimes it works, and sometimes you just get this ugly high vis strip on the bottom of your photo, and you're like, what is that? I can't really do anything with that. But pretty much you just kind of pick your spot on where cars are coming through. Like Sharon, you can get them coming if you stand far enough back in the infield. Everybody will be as close as they can to the turn. You could kind of get blur shots and your normal shots in the 1 and 2, and then pretty much just pick your spot in between each person. But it's sometimes it gets difficult everywhere you go. You just kind of play your style, I guess. I like doing blur. Some people don't like it. Some people do. I don't. It's just easier for me because it's like if you get that one blurred shot, it's like, okay, that's perfect for me. But then again, it's like you kind of got to deal with the people in front of you, I guess. You just pick your spots in between and hope you get what you get, and you're gonna get the same shot sometimes as six other people that are standing there, but you just kind of gotta
Mhm.
play your role, I guess.
What kind of camera do you use and what setup for it do you generally use?
So I have a Canon R8, which came out I think last March. I think is what it was. It's the same insides as like a Canon R6, so it's just a cheaper version of it, but lighter. And then I use a 70 to 200 lens with a 2.8 aperture, which means I could get like when it gets dark out, I can use that lens. It's not really gonna hurt me. It just depends on like my settings or whatever. And I don't use a tripod. I just think carrying around a big old tripod with your camera, you just kind of waiting to fall, I guess. It's my thing. Every time I see someone running with a tripod, I'm like, someone's gonna fall and you're gonna bust the camera. And I get so scared. But it's pretty much all handheld. Lincoln this year, I tried something different. I put a mount on top of my camera that my phone sat on, and I did a video of me taking pictures of like the camera lens like going with the cars, and then I made a TikTok with the camera doing that, and then I put pictures to that of when I shot it, and it kind of gave like a sense of like what people see me doing, but here's the photo, and it's like kind of gives you that different perspective of what I'm capturing plus what you see. And I was like, I don't know if I like this. I see a whole bunch of people doing it, and I'm like, I don't know, I'll try it. And I liked it, but it's like it's so much to like sit there and like mess with your phone and then hurry up and pull the camera. It's like it's I just like taking pictures and that's pretty much it. I tried GoPro for a while and I was like, it's just too much stuff to have in your bag and you're just running around filming. It's like just I like going, taking photos and using pretty much hand free. I have a I have a strap that goes across my chest now, and it my camera sits right here. So if something happens that's like real like quick, I can hurry up and pull it, take it, and be fine. But pretty much setup is just camera and lens. There's no crazy tripods or anything like that. It's just I'm usually camera and that's it.
You
So,
meant, oh, sorry,
all
Tim.
right, go
Go
ahead,
on. You
Colton.
can,
No, go ahead.
um, I was saw that you went to Lincoln, well, last weekend, I believe it was, or maybe it was two
The
weeks ago. I
weekend
can't
before,
remember.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was that your first time at, excuse me, at Lincoln?
No, that was my third time there. So I go the last 3 years I went for the chiller or the icebreaker they call it. And I went my first time I went with Rick Rare and Jason Brown, and they were like, "Hey, this is a different animal. Like, there's gonna be a ton of photographers there. Like this is a different type of taking pictures." And most of the local guys that we have up here don't go up there, and I now see why. It's just a tricky track. Like I'm sure it's as tricky as it is for us taking pictures, is for them to drive it. And every year it gets better and better. So last year I got Parker Price Miller in the 11 doing a wheelie coming out of four. And I was like, I'm done. I can go home. And I was like, I don't want to take any more pictures. I can go home. That's fine. And then this year I got Chad Trout doing a wheelie coming out of four, and he was like fully like car was twisted, and I had the build up of him on the ground lifting in like sequence. And again, I was like, I got it. I'm fine. I can go home now. So like, I don't need to take any more pictures. I got what I wanted. But there for the chiller or the icebreaker, I think we counted this year like 40 photographers, whether they were inside the fan zone or outside combined, it was probably 30, 40 photographers. So it's kind of like one of those races where I'll take the quote from Gary Ferguson: "You're not getting a cover shot at that race because everybody there probably has the same picture, just different angle. So you're pretty much there to like knock rust off from the off season."
Have you been to any other Central PA tracks other than Lincoln?
No, I don't really go that far. I pretty much just stay at Lincoln. If I go anywhere that way, I kind of leave the Port Royal and Williams Grove alone because the the WRT guys have that over there. All of them are great guys, but I just don't myself don't have the time to go over there. It's just 4.5 hours away, and I pretty much just look forward to seeing what Gary Ferguson, Christopher Hockley. I talk to him all the time. I'm like, yeah, you guys got that place all to yourselves. So like that's all you guys. I don't want. If at one point I would like to go to Eldora and take pictures there, but it's just kind of the farthest I'll go is Lincoln. I don't really mess with those tracks at all.
So what's your favorite track to take pictures at?
Oh man, so it's kind of a toss up between Sharon, obviously, because the facility itself, the track is always good. They if they have a bad night, most likely the next night is like top tier racing, 3 lanes, 2 lanes. And then there's obviously Lernerville. Lernerville is always a fun place to go to. But then it's like you get those like little tracks, like Raceway 7, that kind of like get you going. Like when they have late models at those little tracks, it's like, all right, why don't they race like this on the bigger tracks? Like they're like door to door the whole time. I guess it just depends on the series. Like local tracks kind of are good. Mercer's always good. Tri-City's good. But like my favorite, I think right now is probably I'd have to say Sharon. It's just you can pretty much go anywhere you want, and you're gonna get something good wherever you go.
Um, you said about how you'd like to go to Eldora someday. Are there any other like bucket list type tracks that you want to go to and take photos at, or even just go as just a fan?
Yeah, that's definitely one I'd like to go to as a fan first to just experience it and say, okay, I've been there. Um, I want to go to the Dome for the late model guys really, really bad. Every time I watch that race on TV, I'm like, I can only imagine how much fun it is in the middle, just watching these guys just pretty much total their cars to just win this race. Like the amount of characters that are there, like you have Ricky Thornton, you've got like Tyler Erb, obviously Carpenter, like you have all these like characters that come out and it's like so funny to me, but it looks so much fun. And then you obviously have like the Chili Bowl. Everybody wants to go to the Chili Bowl. I've talked to some people about the Chili Bowl, and they're like, you pretty much stick to a spot because there's so many people that go. Like every time you watch, you'll see just nothing but high vis in the center, and it's like those guys are shoulder to shoulder everywhere you go. So I'd like to go to those to take pictures just to say, like, just check them off and say, I took pictures at the Dome. Here's the photos. I took pictures at the Chili Bowl. Like, those are definitely the big ones. But there's there's tracks like there's places in like Indiana that do like the USAC stuff just to take pictures of Brady Bacon going in the turn. I mean, Chad Warner got the best one of him flipping and going out of the track and landing on like a truck, and he made a T-shirt out of the picture, and I thought that was so cool. But yeah, that's pretty much like the only like two. Obviously, like the out of state ones you want to go to, but you obviously need the and time and money to travel and do all that stuff. But I would definitely love to go to those two tracks and just say, I was there, I seen the chaos. I don't want to go back.
Do you have a favorite class that you like to take photos of?
So last year, everyone wants me to say sprint cars because sprint cars are just you have the dudes of like Larson and like the Outlaws and everybody. But like some modified races, like big blocks, you have the Kings, you got Chaz Wolbert, you got all these dudes that like put on shows. Like the Ryder Memorial race last year when Matt Williamson won was like the best race I've seen all year, other than the high limit race, because Matt Williamson is so clean and so smooth that he's just so fun to watch. Like there's sometimes where you just put the camera down and watch him for 3 or 4 laps, and you're like, how does he just still get away? And then you have Eric Rudolph. That's just he'll move you if he has to. So you know if he has to come up to the field, you got to watch that car. And then there's the late model series. So last year, towards like the middle end of the year, I was more into the late models because it's just every race was just door to door. You couldn't really say who was going to win each race. Most, I wouldn't say most. I mean, I guess some of the sprint car races, you could say like who's there. You're like, okay, this is your top five. Some of those late model races you go to, it's like anyone can win, anything can happen. It's like I definitely turned more towards the late model side last year, towards the end of the year, and it was a huge blast. Like I went to Marion Center, never took pictures there before. My dad was like, "Yeah, they take pictures on the backstretch. They don't have no wall. It's tires, and people park on the other side." And I was like sitting there, and there's cars coming around. And I'm like, what if someone comes off? Like, what is this? But they had a thunderstorm coming on the back side of the track, and it made for some of the most craziest pictures of like a whole storm, and it never got to the track. But I have pictures of just the darkest clouds with the whitest clouds like mixed into each other. But definitely towards the end of the year last year, I was for sure a late model fan. I was like wherever late models were, I was like I kind of want to go there. But I definitely love all the sprint car guys. But the late models were definitely putting on some hell of a shows last year.
Yeah, towards the end of the year, I like sprint cars, and I went to a couple late model races, and I was getting worried. I was like, crap, I might go to more late model races this year than
Yeah,
sprint cars. And I'm like, I can't let
yeah.
that happen.
No,
But
it's like you almost have to keep it like a 50-50. But it's like once you start seeing like some of the guys race, you're like, I kind of want to go see him race again. Where are they at? And then you kind of follow them a little bit, and you're like, I was like, I'm a sprint car guy at first. I was like, so I should go back to sprint cars.
um, what are some of your most memorable moments or races that you've taken photos at or photos of?
So I got my first, I guess you would say, first track photographer like experience at Raceway 7. And that was the last race that Kyle Miller ran at, that ran the Economods. That was his last race before he ended up sadly passing away and everything. And I have a picture. Someone let me stand on their hauler, and they did the prayer, and I had every single person in frame with the prayer, and everybody was in blue. And that was like still to this day probably one of like the most memorable races that I've ever been to and been a part of. And I was super happy to be able to take that photo and then take pictures of his last race. And it was just one of those things where we kind of just we talked to Kyle Miller like a couple months prior to that and started like getting to know him and like figure out the story and everything on how like the cancer and everything kind of kept coming back. And we're like, well, hopefully it goes away. But cancer's a cancer's a shitty thing. So, but he installed a handbrake in the car, and he went out there and he won his heat race. You would have never thought anything was wrong. Nothing. He went out there and just spanked him. Heat race. But he's just got too tired and kind of worn out in the feature. But that's probably like the most memorable race that I've ever been a part of and been able to be like, I was there to see that and witness everybody come together as a racing community to support that. I mean, obviously the Rider Memorial last year was huge. Uh, I have the replica check of that race that Matt Williamson has, and I got to talk to uh, the Ryder family and everything, and Nathan and Shane Izzo, Nathan Roddy and Shane Izzo put on a hell of a race last year. Like to have the sprint car guys there, I think the Rutherford car won. Mark Smith won the sprint car race in the 19, and Jeremy Cornball put on a show. Dude always puts on a show. They're racing a 305 with a 410, and he's passing him on the outside. It was like just super cool to see. He was just ripping past them. But it's like the memorial races are like the races that are pretty like special. So I would say those two. I mean, last year I got to take a picture of Kyle Larson and Dale Jr. talking to each other in the push truck, and Kyle's talking to him on his pit bike. I took a picture of it, printed it out. I was like, this will be forever like one of my cool photos of just not actually in a car, just two legends together. But yeah, definitely the Kyle Miller one I would say is probably the my biggest one.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to meet Kyle Miller once. I had the same type of cancer he had
Mhm.
a few years ago, and my mom and his mom, they like talked over Facebook and stuff during my treatments and stuff, and so once in a while message each other, and they're a really good family, and
Yeah,
uh
they're definitely an amazing family. The mom, the dad, everybody. They're anytime I see them, I try to talk to them, but definitely a very, 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 very good family.
um oh, did you get to meet Dale Jr. when you were at the high limit race? I know your brother Devin got a picture with him.
Yeah, so it was kind of funny. He went into the fan zone and he thought he was going to be like slick, put his hood up, like, but you can't be very slick when you have security around you. So it's not really going to work out. But the first person I noticed, I seen him, and I was like, I can't believe he's in fan zone. Like, there's no way he's gonna get seen. First person that seen him was a dude with a number 8 Budweiser jersey from like way back. He like looked at him and like doubled, instantly went over with his phone. He's like, everybody swarmed over. My brother ran over. I heard up, and I'm like trying to get a picture of like him talking to Junior, and I got a picture of him fist bumping him. And that's the photo he posted, and I was like, "There you go, forever you have it." And he walked out of the fan zone, and I was like, "You might as well come down there in 3 and 4." I was like, there's no fans down there. It's just photographers." I was like, "You'll see everything you need down there." He was like, "All right, that's thank you. We'll go down there." And he brought him, his co-host for his podcast. I think his son. I'm not really sure who, nephew or
Or
something.
yeah, it was his nephew.
And he brought them all down, and they're sitting there. And the one guy, his co-host, was watching me and Zach on one knee, leaning on the barrier on the bottom, taking pictures. And he's just like looking at us like, "You guys are crazy." He's like, "I would never, no, I'd never stand that close. I would never go that close." And it's like, well, by the time they get here, it's you have a little bit of room to just lay down. But yeah, we talked to him for a little bit, but I figured he was probably just there to see the race and probably didn't want to be bothered. So it was pretty much like, hey, big fan, like you can come down here with us. You won't get bothered. I mean, a few of us went over, took a picture with him. I kind of just let him be after that. It was cool to see him. And then I shot the shot of him and Larson talking to each other. And then I have a shot of, I went on the driver's side and took a picture, and it was like a glow over him. I was like, that's a cool shot. You send it to them, but you know they're not going to see it. They see like this little name, and they're like, I didn't get to see that. So yeah, we got to talk to him a little bit, but I wanted to talk to him more, but I was like, he wants to be here for the experience. I was like, so I just let him go.
So, what is it like taking photos of guys when they're like flipping through the air? I don't know if you take those photos or not, but I've seen them.
So, so last year I got my cousin Hunter Exley. He flipped in the rush wingless sprint. So I was gonna stay outside the track. Usually outside the track, you take cool pictures of them, post to the wall. It was dusty, and I was like, no, I don't want to deal with that. I'll just go to the middle. He's coming out. So I had another like photographer, videographer with me, and he's like, yeah, I'll go with you. Sure enough, first lap, he goes in, flips, puts the car into the fence. I was the only one down there that got it. He was the only one to get the video. And him being family, obviously, I wanted to make sure he was all right. But last year, that was like my only flip. I had like a few like close calls, but if they happen, you just pretty much just hit the button and then just let it just just go. But that one was like a little more like personal because he was
Hmm.
family, and I wanted to make sure he was okay. And I sent it to his mom. I was like, "Hey, these are the pictures. I don't know if he wants to see them yet, but these are the pictures." I like transferred them from my camera to my phone, sent him it, and then that guy sent me the video, and I sent it to him, and it happened so fast that by the time he had a chance to redirect, it was it was over. But I definitely get a few here and there. It just depends on the spot. Sometimes you'll turn around and you're like, what's the crowd going like crazy for? And then you see the car flipping on the other side of the track, and you're like, I was just down there. It's like nothing happened. And I come down here and there's someone flipping over there. But I'd like to get more, I guess. It's nice when it doesn't happen because someone doesn't total a car. But I definitely it happens sometimes, but definitely not as often.
Yeah, you definitely probably don't want them to happen, but if they do, you want to be in that spot where you can get some pictures and let the guys see them.
Yeah, because he's like, I want to see him. I was like, I don't know, dude. That one where you're hitting the fence, I was like, that's a pretty gnarly photo. I was like, that's definitely not one I like to send around. So I didn't post any of them until he was like, hey, you can post them. And I was like, that's pretty much how all of us are. If someone flips and it's like you don't have a definite answer on if they're okay or not, you pretty much just wait. Like message the family, message the team, say, hey, what's the update? I have the photos if you want them. Is it okay to post? If not, that's fine. I won't post. I'll let you guys post. Pretty much the like I guess the universal rule, I guess, in taking pictures.
Um, so what are some of your some of the races you plan on going to this year? Or do you just kind of just if you got time you go to them, or do you kind of plan it out?
Last year I planned out most of them. I mean, obviously due to weather, plans change. This year I have the first couple weeks planned out already. Like this week coming up, I'll be at Pittsburgh. That'll be my first time taking pictures there. Tyler and those guys did amazing job last year. Talked to Tyler a little bit here and there, but I talked to one of the guys from Pittsburgh at the World of Wheels show in Pittsburgh. Talked to him for about a half hour or so, and we were pretty cool. I was like, I'm coming. I was like, whenever you guys have a sprint car race, and they're like, oh yeah, it's on this day, and I was like, oh, all right, I'll be there. And then that I'll go to the Du Bois Mall show at the end of March, and then it'll be the Mercer Chiller Thriller, and then after that, it's just Lernerville season opener, Sharon season opener, and then after that, you pretty much just kind of. I know everybody usually has a schedule. Like I know Rick and them have schedules that they already like put out, but for me, I kind of just see what's going on that weekend, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going here, or I'm going there, I'm going here. Or if nothing's really going on, then I'll be like, okay, well, I'm gonna go take pictures of go-karts. I'll go to Lockhart's for the 1 or 2 or 3 times a year that I go there. I definitely like to go there more because he definitely does a terrific job on that track, and he definitely needs more people there to support. So I try to do everything I can to help out over there. But pretty much after the first, like, I'd say month and a half, I pretty much just pick and choose where I go. I don't really stick to one track or stick to one series. I pretty much just go, okay, there's 410s and late models here. That's going to be a good show. I'll go there. Pretty much just see what's going on that weekend and go.
Nice. So what goes in, I mean, if you have one, what goes into your editing process afterwards?
So I use Lightroom
Mhm.
for most of my photos. It's just much easier to use Lightroom because you can transfer from Lightroom to SmugMug, where the website I have, they just post to there and I have everything already set up. And usually after the race, I'll come home, upload the photos onto Lightroom, and then the next day I'll just sit there for like an hour, find probably 20 to 30 photos to send to Race Pro Weekly. So I shoot for them all year. All my credentials go through them, and I send them probably 10 to 20 photos to use if they use it for an article or they put it on the website in a gallery. And then I send photos to the track right after, usually within like a day or two, and pretty much just after that, do the photos when I have time to do them, and then just upload the gallery where if people want to purchase them or just want to look at them, they can.
Um, what what are or crap. I forgot my question almost. What's a what's a drive like what was your favorite driver growing up? Whether it was just dirt or just in general.
So I was a big Ed Litch Jr. and Rob Blair fan. Like I love those two drivers. I mean, Rod George was definitely up there. Bob Felmy. Even now, it's like crazy to think that when I was super super little, he was racing, and now I'm still like old enough taking pictures of him and like talking to him. It's like it's a weird like little kid type feel every time you talk to him because it's like you were like one of my like top tier drivers from Tri City and all that. Rob Blair, my dad and him were friends like back in the day when I was like super little when he was still racing at Tri City. Still friends now, but Rob goes with Max all over the place. So it's like when you see him, you talk to him and everything, but you definitely don't see him and talk to him, I guess, as much as you would like. So definitely, I would say Rob Blair, Ed Lynch, Bob Felmy, uh, Jeremiah Shingledecker was like one. You knew every time that car was on the track that it was like when you were little, it's like that's a guaranteed win. Like there's no one beating Jeremiah. And even today, it's when he goes on the track, it's still that like little feeling of no one's gonna beat him. But those are my top guys. I mean, you obviously like I was a big Darren Pittman fan for really even to this day. I love Darren. I got to talk to him a whole bunch of times before I was taking pictures. We would go to all the outlaw races, and I got a replica helmet of his Great Clips helmet, and my parents went over and bought one and had it signed for my birthday. I had no clue. We're sitting in the stands, and my parents come up with like this big box. And I'm like, what the heck is that? They're like, here. And I opened it up, and it was his helmet with his signature on it. And I was like, well, I got to get a picture with him now. That's the only way. So we went back down, got a picture with it, and I've been a fan of him since I was super, super little. And I don't care if he wins a race ever again or doesn't race ever again. I'm still a fan in whatever he does.
Um, I guess that's pretty much it. Just the last thing I want to do before we end this is just ask you where people can follow you and your photography and if they want to purchase some of your photos where they can go and do that at.
So you can find me on Facebook. It's Branden Goodman Photography. And then I have an Instagram. It's just Branden Goodman Photo. It'll pop right up. It's pretty much my personal on there. All of my accounts have the link to my smug mug. You just hit it, go straight to it. It has like a home screen, has a slideshow of like 10 of the photos I think are like my coolest photos. And then you could go down. I have, what is it? I have folders from, what is it, 2020 up till now. So if you're just kind of looking to see photos, I guess, from that race, or you're like, oh, I have a buddy that raced, or even anyone, the driver that's raced, and they're looking for photos from past or something for t-shirts or whatever, they're all on there. And I post all of my good photos and bad photos. So you can kind of like, oh God, that's bad. And then the next one is like good. I I hate the fact of people don't post the bad ones. It's like you gotta let everybody know that you don't only take good photos. So there are some photos in there where you're like, God, who gave this guy a camera? But yeah, all of my socials are all my first name, last name, and then photography. So Facebook, Instagram. I have Threads. I don't really use it that much. Twitter is the same. Branden Goodman Photography. Uh, Pretty much all of them are all my name, and that's it. Just send me a message anytime. I'll answer eventually, but anytime.
Awesome.
I, Tim, you got any more questions? I kind of forgot to ask you that.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, that's about it for this episode. Thanks for coming on. We'll do the outro right now too because can't edit this weekend. But like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, rate 5 stars and follow on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and get to a dirt track if you can.